Already click the box.
Perfect. So, briefly, the reason why I don't think pantheism is the best type of theological concept is because of um, how I view some of the philosophical terms within, like, how to describe the universe and how I look at the essence of what we call God. What are the attributes or the characteristics of what do we even describe as God? What is God? Kind of questions, right? What are we? All of these kinds of deep questions. Um, a lot on my channel, I talk a lot about arguments for the existence of God, and I normally do so in the context of atheism. I deal a lot
Okay.
with atheistic and agnosticism, people that are
All right.
bringing
I
up
like that a little bit
objections.
more. Agnosticism.
Yeah,
Yes, I like that a little bit more.
yeah. So this is atheism is obviously lack of belief in a god, and then agnosticism is saying I just strictly don't know if there is a god or if there is not a god. So that person would be in the middle. So I mainly deal with that. Um, and I present a few arguments that help me to give to people to say, hey, you know what? I think this right here gives us sufficient reason to say that there is a God. So I'm giving you this context so you can kind of see where I'm coming from with the pantheistic worldview. So the reason why I don't hold to pantheism is I have I'll do two, maybe three arguments that I think can help us to conclude that pantheism may not be the correct view. So first, um, one of my favorite arguments that I gave is called the Kalam cosmological argument. And it basically just goes like this. Premise 1. Anything that begins to exist has a cause. Premise 2. The universe began to exist. 3. Therefore, the universe has a cause. So, out of this first argument, there's really, nothing super debatable here. Some would try to debate
Correct.
premise 2, but nonetheless, that's a part of the idea, right? And this
And
is
I would have to
to
agree
the
with you
full.
on your first premise, for sure.
Okay, so yeah, this argument that's all it's trying to show is that hey, the universe began, so since it began, there has to be a cause. So then
Right.
someone might ask, well, what would the cause of the universe be? And this is a deductive argument, meaning if the premises are true, the conclusion follows logically or necessarily. So it then rips around into another form of the argument, and this is part two of the Kalam argument, and it goes like this: based on our Big Bang cosmology, which states that the universe began about 13.8 billion years ago, right? Due to physical observations that we have found, right?
Right.
Whether it be with Einstein's general theory of relativity, or whether it be with um, Hubble, and ever since then too.
Right.
So
Oh shit.
when I look at it like that, it then goes like this: if space, time, and matter had a beginning, then the cause of space would have to be something that is spaceless. The cause of time would have to be something that's timeless, and the cause of matter would have to be something that's immaterial. You see where I'm going?
I do. I do.
So, this description, what I've described so far, is spaceless, timeless, immaterial being. But we can go even a little deeper. This being would often, this cause, this first cause, would have to also be something that is powerful, enabling it to create something out of nothing. It would have to be personal, enabling it to make a decision to go from uh, something to nothing, or nothing to something. I said it backwards. So, when looking at this full characteristics that I've described here, we're looking at a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, powerful agent of the universe. But as I've described in that first premise, we can see that the universe is finite, meaning it has not always existed. It's only existed for about, like I said, 14 billion years. So if that's the case, we can then see. Oh man, I got caught reloading.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then this, when you think of the universe is a contingent thing, meaning it hasn't always been here, right? So it's something that began to exist. But God, by definition, would have to be something that has always existed. So, by that definition, God is outside of all of our space-time reality. You see what I mean? So by that
Which
definition, yeah,
I can see where you're coming from with that.
yeah.
Are you going to? I mean, not going to, but is that also under the assumption that, let's say, like, if there is a God, that means that that God doesn't even necessarily have to know that this universe is created? Think about, like, do you know what I mean by that? Like,
Are you talking about like foreknowledge, into the sense of like, would he?
like
Is he like omniscient?
since you're saying that the universe had to be created by something outside of the universe,
Right.
maybe God is something that doesn't even know that the universe is a thing. Maybe like he doesn't know that he created it. Maybe that's the thing that we
Oh, I see.
think of as the thing that is outside of us that created us is
Okay.
not
Yeah.
necessarily an intelligent being, nor something, if it is an intelligent being, that being doesn't have to know that it's created us. Like maybe we're
Gotcha.
just like
Yeah.
maybe we're like a battery for like a really like impressive thing at like an amusement park in like some other like universe, or like, you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm trying to
Right.
say when I say that.
Yeah. Yeah, and for that last part, I agree that there, who knows, maybe one day we do find multiple universes and stuff of that stature. Who knows what we will continue to find with all of these scientific advancements, and what we may or may not be able to find in the future. But this argument so far, it's simply provided that this is the cause of the universe. So like, this is what brought the universe into being. This is why we can ask like the old question of old Leibniz, where he says, "Why is there something rather than nothing?" And this is the explanation: a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, powerful agent of the universe. Something beyond it, something that is not bound by it. It's kind of like if I were to describe you know, I'm looking at a painting, for example, and I know that a painting can only come from a painter, right? And the painter it only can exist outside of the painting, right? A painting can't cause a painting to exist. It has to be an agent, some kind of
So
causation.
basically, right. So basically,
Yeah.
this is just a first step in the rest of your argument. You're saying like, regardless or not, if this person
Yeah.
even, I get what you're saying. Now, continue.
Right, right. So to me, I think I see this as fatal to what we describe as pantheism, because I think what it does is it shows that A, the universe hasn't always existed, and then B, it would show that this whatever we describe as God, whatever this God is, it would have to be something beyond causation. It's something that exists necessarily. It's a completely different definition to any contingent thing in this universe, right? So like, we are things that exist contingently, and everything in this universe exists contingently, right? But the reason why I think it's so fatal to pantheism is because you could ask questions like, okay, well, since the universe hasn't always existed, and you could hypothesize, we also see that like, hey, the universe is going to die one day due to like, the heat death of the universe, we call it, right? And if the universe is going to die, does that also mean that God is going to die too? And it leads to, I think, a lot of logical absurdities, things that cannot be reconciled philosophically. So that's why I think this shows good evidence of what we think of as traditional or classical monotheism in a type of sense like that. So a God that exists beyond the universe and is the cause of it. As I gave the analogy of a painting and a painter.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think of that?
It's hard because, whenever I think of God, right,
Right.
I tend to believe that God doesn't exist yet outside the universe, but doesn't exist in it yet, like exist around it. I don't know how to describe it.
Hmm.
I don't think of God as a being or a person. That's just how I've come to the conclusion of him. Like at this point in my
Yeah.
life, like I don't think God could be a caring. If he is a being, I don't think he could be a caring being or a loving
Right.
being like everybody says he is. So I just don't believe he is a being, because
Yeah.
like the I don't think the Gospels are incorrect. I just think that the way that they convene their information is skewed in a lot of different ways,
Hmm.
and certain areas that they talk about could be, in my opinion, incorrect at some times, and that could be opinionated or factual, whatever. I'm not gonna get into that because that's like a whole nother thing. But
No, no, you're good.
but
Yeah,
since that has been like the occurrence in my life, it makes me not believe in like a being, you know what I mean,
hmm,
that has created the universe. So
yeah,
that's why it,
gotcha.
it makes it it makes it hard for me to like
For
understand
sure.
your perspective. But I do get what you're saying.
Right, right. And see, that's the thing is that so the argument that I presented thus far is a deductive argument, meaning if the premises are true, then the conclusion just follows necessarily.
Exactly.
Um,
Right. Right. Right.
so here's the thing is I would also agree in some type of way, like, and it depends on how we're defining our terms here. Um, when we say person, God is not a person.
Right. Or an
Depending on how
omnipotent
you're
being
using
is what
that.
I mean. Correct.
Okay,
Right.
because like I also don't believe that God is like a man in the sky kind of thing. Because I see God
Right.
as a immaterial spirit. God is
Right. Right. That's
a,
how I
a
kind of see it as well.
I would describe it as a disembodied mind. It's a disembodied mind that exists immaterially. So this is the agent that caused the universe into coming into being. And the reason why I would say that I think we do have reason to conclude that um, it is a personal being. Let me make sure I get this next match going. Okay, it's searching already. So the reason why I think that we can conclude that it is a personal agent, meaning that it does care about things, that it can care about, right? Um,
That it's
I would
able
say
to. That that's able to.
right, right. It's and because I would try to say is like there's a few ways that you could go about it. So A is to go from nothing to something requires a decision, and only beings can make decisions, right? So like for example, um, gravity isn't deciding to make sure that my phone is going to fall if I were to drop it, or my controller that's in my hand that's going to fall to the floor. It just is. It's a law of nature. But the cause of things in that type of way, as me as an agent, I can intervene to make it not do so. I can make it to not fall onto the ground, right? And
Right.
likewise with God, and that's what I mean with God, into the senses of like um, the cause of the universe by the definition of what this being is would have to be a personal being in the same way that I was describing it as spaceless, timeless, immaterially existent, and powerful. So that's why you can do that, but you can go even deeper than that. You could even ask a question like this: how could being come from non-being? Right. So like you and I are beings. So how could we come from non-being?
Right. Like
You know?
God, or like
Yeah.
our perception of God had to have had a creator in some sense, if your belief is true,
Right.
and that's what makes it tricky. Because then at that point, it's just an infinite line of gods making more and more people, and which means that we would end up
Hmm.
being gods, which makes it very hard to like understand because then it's like, it's a loop.
Right. So, and that's why I would say that, like, these are two reasons that we can conclude that the cause of the universe would have to be a personal being. Like, it's a being that cares about human um, inferences, but he may not necessarily engage in all of these human interests. You know what I mean? Because we're not describing a God necessarily that makes sure that we're happy and whatnot. I'm not describing a God like that, but I'm
I
describing
would
a
feel
God.
like if a
Yeah.
god were to even intervene whatsoever, not intervene as so as to like on Earth, I mean like intervene as in have a thought towards us in general, like
Hmm.
notice us. Period. That's what I mean by that. If
Mm.
a god were to do that, I also wouldn't believe that they would have the same not only moral compass but even like deeper than that, like how we believe what is right and what is wrong, they could it could be either flipped or it could be like certain things are not and certain things are, and that's what also makes it tricky because then we don't know what they believe, even though we would think that they would instill that into us. We don't know, and that's
Hmm.
why there's all these questions.
Oh yeah, I agree for sure. Yeah, so does this argument make a little bit of sense? Like, are you following on the overall scheme of it into the sense of,
Yes.
of us? Okay, so do you agree
Yes,
with
I
it
am.
at least on any of the parts that we've described so far?
I can see where you're coming from,
Okay,
and I can
but you're
agree
not
with certain
fully.
points.
Okay.
I can agree with certain points that you are saying, yes.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
obviously, you're gonna have to bring a lot of cake to the table if you're gonna want me to switch my belief stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no, I completely understand. Oh, so that because this is just one we've provided so far. This is like I said, this was called the Kalam argument, and this is just a brief one. It's not even really a main argument for what I described, but you can use it for this. That's why I decided to use it. Um, but another one that could come into this, and along with the analogy that I gave just a little bit ago, I guess I should also ask. This could be a good branch into this topic. Do you believe in the Bible? I heard you mention the Gospels a little bit ago.
Um, so whenever people say, "Do I believe in the Bible?" I ask them a follow-up question, and then I answer their first question based off the answer to their second question. So,
What you got?
whenever you say believe in the Bible, do you mean believe in like Moses and like God speaking to Moses and like the bush and the fire, blah blah blah, and stuff like that, where like and Jesus turning water into wine? Do you believe in those kinds of things with the Bible? No, I do not. But whenever they speak of like the Gospels, because whenever I was a child, I was raised Christian, and I was also slightly raised Catholic because my aunt, I had to stay with my aunt for a year, and she was Catholic, and I was on punishment. She made me read the New Testament when I was on
Mm-hmm.
punishment, and whenever I went back home with my grandmother, I was always getting gospel from the Old Testament. So I have teachings from both. I understand certain things from both, and I disagree with a lot of things from both. But I agree with definitely a lot of the moral things of the Bible. Some
Right.
things, I hear and I read a lot of things in the Bible, and there's a lot of things I don't agree on. There's a lot of things like I wouldn't even be able to say, like probably on a YouTube, if you're doing this for YouTube. But
Gotcha.
the
Yeah. So
Bible does,
yeah, and that's
have
okay too.
some errors, I would say.
Gotcha. Yeah, and see, and I wasn't even really getting into that. The only reason I asked was because I know a lot of people come to this conclusion using the words of Jesus, and I know a lot of people like to try to say that Jesus tried to teach us that we are all God. So that's the only reason I brought that up. But
Right.
if you're not taking that perspective, then that's totally fine. We can just continue on from the philosophical perspective.
Okay, let's
Um,
continue. Yeah.
yeah. So that's the only reason because I wasn't sure if you were coming from like a Jesus perspective or not, or if you're just kind of coming from more of a
No.
philosophical. So
Yeah, I'm more of a like how you said it, I'm more of an agnostic person myself. I tend to believe more
gotcha.
of like, yeah, we don't know for sure, and a lot of the people that say that they know, probably, they're
Right. Right.
taking if they're not like you, how you're taking a lot of different beliefs and you're crafting your own, you know, beliefs,
Yeah.
and because there's a lot of people that go around like, this is what it is, this is how you have to believe it, and those are the people I disagree with, and it's
For
not really
sure.
religion I
Yeah.
disagree with, it's those people.
Sure. I
And
get that.
that's
Yeah.
and that's definitely a reason why I stayed
Hmm. Yeah, I
whenever
appreciate the
yeah,
conversation
we
for
talked.
sure. It's been great.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but no,
So,
continue.
um, considering you're not really taking the Jesus perspective, I'll go down a different light because I know a lot of people. That's the only reason I brought that up because I know a lot of people get hung up on that because they're like, hey, they're fully convinced that Jesus is the God of the universe, which I believe in Christianity. I'm a Christian. I believe in the words of Jesus. And I can go into some of the Moses stuff also to kind of give you a different look of that too. But nonetheless, um, my only thing about that was just so that people distort Jesus' words and that idea, and they try to say that this is what he taught when it's not what he taught
Yeah, and
at
that's
all. But
another thing that I hate, because even though I might not be fully Christian myself, even though I was as a child,
yeah,
I really dislike it when people try to say that this is this and then it's completely incorrect. That is another thing that I hate. Oh my goodness.
yeah, for sure. So we'll just continue on with the more of the philosophical view then. So I've described just the kalam so far. Um, but I could follow that up with just a question into the, so if you believe the at least the first half of the Kalam argument, which you agreed to, if which is the premise one, premise two, premise three conclusion,
Correct.
um, if that's what you do conclude, then I would just simply ask, well, if you think that the universe is finite in that way, do you think that when the universe dies, do you think that God would die also?
I don't know if it's. I don't know if it's. Okay, so do you know how people like how you just said how the universe will die? I don't
Right,
think
right.
that the universe can die. I think that the people that have came to the conclusion that the universe will die are incorrect, and I can explain that I'll explain a short explanation as to that, but when it comes down to the very end of everything on the universe, what's left in the universe?
Right, so I'm just going off of
Like,
the scientific consensus of heat death, which is the idea that our universe is ran by entropy and thermodynamics, and basically, it just basically the easiest way to describe it is that everything is running out of energy, right? So, like for example, you go and put gas in your car, and your car is going to run out of gas because you only have a finite amount of gas in your car. Same thing with the universe. The universe is running out of energy, so once it runs out of energy, heat death. It just
right.
implodes into nothingness. You know what I
And I
mean?
and I agree, and that is a thing that could happen. But just like how people believe in the Big Bang, how the Big Bang had to have come from something, right? And the Big
Right.
Bang could have easily just came from a, a bunch of. So at the end of what is presumed to be the heat death of the universe, there is only going to be a couple things presumed to be left in the universe, and those things are going to presumably be black holes, which aren't even going to be the very last things. Those are going to be very far from the last things. And then iron or miscellaneous mixtures of different, you know, I guess you would say planets of matter just floating around in just the nothingness of the heat death.
Mm.
Eventually, due to the laws of creation that the universe inherently has, we witnessed it. Even if we don't know
Yeah.
that the heat death will cause the collapse of the laws of nature and gravity and the things that we do know to be
Mm.
laws now, but if it does, then this is completely out the window. But if it doesn't, then
Yeah.
everything will eventually collapse back into itself and presumably not create a big bang, but at least create enough energy and matter to not sustain universe, recreation, but at least not complete heat death in the universe. I
Mm.
don't believe that there would be a second coming of the universe, like some people do believe, but I don't think it would completely die. I do think it would be more of so how, let's say, when something decomposes, it doesn't necessarily turn to nothing. It's just now in a different form of something that obviously we don't want, but like a fly wants it, so a fly will go get it. It's like, something may develop in the heat depth of the universe that we don't even. Something could be on a distant planet made of diamonds that rains acid that evolved to be smarter than us. You know what I mean? Like, so anything
Right.
is
Right.
possible, right? As long as
Yeah.
there is something
Yeah.
there to create something more.
Yeah. And that and the end. Obviously, the heat death end isn't an observable idea, only because it
Correct.
hasn't happened yet. Obviously, but
And we don't even know if that is a real, obviously because it hasn't happened. We can't witness it.
yeah. So and the only reason that it's a consensus is just only because it's based on the entropy and the thermodynamics.
Right,
We're
right.
just running out of usable energy for sure. So it would definitely happen. It's just what are the contexts of it? Happening. What happens after the fact is certainly would be up to physical and empirical observation for sure. But nonetheless, the only reason I asked that was because I was just trying to see how you view that part of in descriptions of God. Um, so that can then
No,
branch
yeah,
into the kind of into
I do
this.
believe, yeah, that heat death could, like, theoretically be possible. Like how people, obviously scientists have said that it could be possible.
Right.
Another like factor that we haven't even thought of the universe is that we say that the universe is forever expanding, um, we don't know if the universe is forever expanding, or if, like, let's say, we don't know if the universe is bigger than what we know. Like, the universe could be
Hmm.
a thing that eats other things to gain matter. Do you get me? Or the universe could be a cell in an organism that, since time goes so slow, the farther down
Yeah.
you go, we're just experiencing time in such a slow manner that we don't even understand that. You know,
Hmm. Yeah, and
there's so many
there
different
are
things that could happen that I can't say that the heat death will occur,
right.
but
Yeah,
I
and
do
see,
think
there
that the
are
universe will eventually come to a state in which there
yeah.
are there is nothing that will create energy other than forces contracting and collapsing onto each other. I will say that.
Hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, and that's what there is some debate among some cosmologists that the universe is just merely infinite, and it's always been
Right.
here.
And
You
I
know,
can't believe that because that doesn't make sense to me. And
yeah,
I don't think, as obviously people say, like, oh, the universe and the God is bigger than your brain. You can't understand it. I don't
right.
think this way.
So
If I could
the
understand
reason
that, it would make sense to me. That's how stupid it sounds.
it is, yeah, it's interesting for sure. I disagree with it only because I think our scientific evidence of Einstein and Hubble and George Lemaitre of their day, and then obviously our newer stuff with the Big Bang has just been shown to be so good, so true. Like we can literally go back to the moment of the Big Bang with all so much of the scientific, empirical, and observational data, and we can like literally see the Big Bang happened back, and we can see it happening. You know what I mean? As it expands in space time. So I just think that it's and the numbers that are based on our mathematical uh, concepts, it shows the 13.8 billion year mark to be like absolutely correct. So that's why I say, like, you know if we go backwards a little bit into our first idea, this is why I say that I don't think that everything can be God, because everything hasn't always existed. So matter that we see it as, you and I are matter, right? Everything is matter. Now there's different forms of matter,
And that's
obviously.
what and I agree with that. And
Yeah.
yet, I believe my argument still stands because, listen, I believe that all of us are God. We come from what is presumed to be what created the universe, right? And so, in both of our arguments, you know,
Yeah.
something can have created the universe, and yet we can still be everything in the universe because, based off of your argument, ah, no, I'll say based off of my argument. Based
Hmm.
off of my arguments, we are all, yeah, we can all be energy. That's what I said in the beginning, right? We are all energy that came from God, right? And since I believe that, and since you believe that God, created the universe, we still line up a little bit. Do you get what I understand? Do you get what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because that's certainly where we're on the agreeing with for sure. Now, because the only reason I say I think this is a this puts the pantheistic idea in a bit of a spot is because it's like we're trying to say that the the painter and the painting kind of analogy, as I was describing earlier, it's like we're trying to say that the painter and the painting are the same thing, and I just see that as logically contradictory. You see what I mean? As in, like, in me trying to say that, like, I am in the same category as the being that made all of space-time matter and energy, right? Because energy was also a causation thing within the beginning of the universe, right? So energy also began to exist 13.8 billion years ago. So that's why I say the cause must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, and energyless. Like, it's something that isn't made of parts. That's why I describe it as a disembodied mind. It's a you could almost describe it like this. It's a consciousness that all consciousness can come from. That's probably another way that we could describe it. But to me, this is either a form of classical theism, or this is what we call panentheism, which is the belief that God made the world and he's part of it but not a part of it at the same time. But like pantheism is just straight up saying, oh no, like everything just is God, right? And that's what I'm saying, is I don't think we have sufficient reason or evidence to conclude that, because of the way that these arguments are put forth and just the laws of causation in general, right? So like considering, you know, like for example, here we are playing Xdefiant, and the people that made this game are Mark Rubin and Ubisoft, right? And their
Yeah.
crew, they are also contingent beings, but we can just go on the strict sense of this just to make the analogy make sense. It's almost like, you know, to use it as an analogy, it's like we're trying to say that Mark Rubin is Xdefiant, and to me this just sounds contradictory, right? I would say, well, you know, Mark Rubin isn't Xdefiant.
I feel more as if, think about it like this.
Yeah.
Without the exertion of the energy that created Xdefiant, that came from Mark Rubin and the developers and the team and the coding and whatever that developed that Xdefiant runs on, right? Without that, Xdefiant would have never came to exist and would still never be a thing till this, like, continuing on till now, right? And so it's still, you know, you can say, oh yeah, it can't be them, you know, it doesn't make sense, it's contradictory because, yeah, they don't have the same energy, blah blah blah, right? But think of it more like, it's not the exact same energy, it's more the gift of allowing it to have its own energy that lets it sustain itself and lets it, you know, come back to itself once it, you know, inevitably, you know, goes on into its heat death, you know. Maybe, you know, maybe it is like how you say it is, and, you know, it obviously can't be, you know, both a creator and us being part of, or that creator ourselves, but
yeah. Now,
you know,
I do think you have a point in saying that, like, well, hey, that being can be a part of us. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Right, like, because you know, as a Christian, I firmly believe in, like, the Holy Spirit and things of this stature, 100%. So I do believe that this thing that we call God, can live within human individuals. But I don't think that we are that individual, as in, like, I wouldn't believe that individual.
As well. I would say if there is, like, how you would, I would say, like, if there is how you would say a being or a intelligible, manifestable, you know, thing that created, right? I would say if that is a thing, then I wouldn't agree that we are it. You know, I wouldn't agree that once. I would say that, you know,
so you're kind of actually describing a more version of what we call pan-in.
that did create us, that did have a say
Pantheism. Oh, no way. Yep, man, we were seconds away
Dang.
from that game ending too. That's funny, but that's all right. I'll get
Oh.
you. We'll see if we're still in the party together.
Yeah,
But
we're chilling.
perfect. All right, we'll get this going. We'll play another one then. Um, but yeah, so um, if that's the case, then we're actually in more agreement. So the cause of the universe is outside the universe. It's something beyond
Right, right,
causation
right. The
itself.
energy that gave the not only the